Hello there, YouTube. How's it going? This is TR Bailey, and I'm going to be coming at you guys with the tech choices in Dragon Rulers video that I promised you guys. Now, I was reading an article on Alter Reality Games, and Fraser Smith, who was writing the article, he happened to point out that this format, that the tech choices in Dragon Rulers, for example, are just way more devastating than what we've seen in the past. An example I can use is, let's look at Alexander Thomas. Now, he played Madolches at the Seattle Regionals, and he's topped with them twice. The first time he got second place, and the first time he got first place. Now, this, this is kind of interesting, but he played Scrapar and Scarecrow both times. Now, that's one of his personal, tech cards. However, that card's not really extremely game-changing. It's not going to change the complete landscape of an entire duel. In my opinion, anyway. However, some of the tech choices that we're going to be talking about today completely change the landscape of a game just by them being put into play. So without further ado, why don't we just get into it? So the first one I wanted to talk to you guys about today was Vanity's Emptiness. Now, this card is very solid. However, even though it has a lot of upside, it does have a lot of downside as well. Now, this card, if those who don't know, it states neither player can special summon monsters. Destroy this card when destroy this card when a card is sent from the deck or field to the graveyard. So, whenever a card will go ahead and hit the graveyard, this card does get destroyed. So that's obviously a downside right there by itself. The second downside is that when you're playing it in Dragon Rulers, it doesn't really have any symmetry with your deck. It's a trap card. It's not a dragon. You can't discard it. And if you haven't set up well enough, you don't want this card yet. So, with that being said, although it's a solid choice, some of the things you can do is set up your field with a Draco Sack, or even a second Draco Sack, with tokens and activate this card. Usually that's the game right there. That's 2 turns and they're dead. Unless they have something like Blast or Heavy Storm or something that can hit the graveyard. Now, like I said, with that being said, this card's solid. We're seeing 2-ofs in some deck choices in Europe, so it'll be interesting to see this. Now, be aware of this card because this card can devastate you. The next card we're going to talk about is Forbidden Chalice. Now, when Dragon Rulers first hit the TCG, we all were playing Breakthrough Skill. I mean, admit it. If you were playing Chalice, you were ahead of us. Because there were some people that were playing it. However, we were seeing more of the benefit of playing Breakthrough Skill instead. Now, with that being said, at the beginning of the time when we got Dragon Rulers, Evil Swarms was going to be the most played deck, or we presumed it was. So at the time, we were seeing a lot of Evil Swarms and a lot of Dragons, and not too many Spellbooks because a lot of players were just simply scared of Eradicator Epidemic Virus. Now, with this card being... now, in those particular scenarios, Breakthrough Skill is better against Evil Swarms or Dragons, especially Evil Swarms, because you can stop Ophion twice with 1 card. Once on their turn to search for their pandemic, and once on your turn. So if they don't already have a pandemic, then they're kind of in a boat right there. So that's what we got going with that. Now, some plays that have come out with this is that people have noticed is that you can simply, if your opponent max sees you, you can simply go into Colossal Fighter and Chalice their guy to be smaller, and then just deck them out. Now, that's a completely unfair and absurd thing that this card can do. And by playing this, it opens up that play. In addition to that, this card also, on your turn, without you having to set it to wait a turn, you can use it to target your opponent's Kaiku or Jowgen, so that you can then special summon or revive monsters that are in the graveyard by banishing other monsters. So Chalice, in my opinion, is definitely the better card from Breakthrough Skill. Expect to see this as a 1 or 2 of in every single deck. Now, this one's my personal favorite. It's Enemy Controller. Now, this is one of the cards that, when I was talking about subtle cards compared to devastating cards, this used to be one of those subtle cards, but now it's completely devastating. Let's say my opponent is, let's say let's say I have 2 dragon monsters on the field. In fact, let me grab 2 dragon monsters. I'll have Tidal and Blaster, let's say. Now, my opponent then has a number 11 Big Eye, which he summons to the field. Now, I'm feeling safe because I either have my Forbidden Chalice set, or I have an Effect Veiler in my hand. So my opponent will then activate the effect and target one of my monsters. I'll then respond with the Effect Veiler, and he will then enemy controller to tribute his Big Eye off the field, so it's unaffected by Effect Veiler, and use enemy controller's effect to target the other card. So now I use an Effect Veiler and I lose 2 monsters, and he then gets to make a Big Eye, or another Big Eye, or a Draco Sack. Now, the reason why this becomes a big deal is because Big Eye can't even attack, and one of the worst things about Big Eye is it sticks to the board. So you're getting rid of multiple problems with one card, and this card. Also, in addition to that, some of the more simpler plays is that when you use a monster off of a dragon summon, you discard, 2 dragons, a baby and a big one, to special summon another dragon, or whatever the situation may be. Then you special summon a dragon that cannot declare an attack, and enemy controller makes it to where it can, and it puts it in the graveyard so it can then activate its effect. So enemy controller is a very solid card. To me, it's actually one of the best cards in the entire deck, but most people don't play this card. Keep this on your radar. Some ways to play around it would be to Effect Veiler Big Eye on summon. However, a lot of times you really just want to be careful because you want to save that Effect Veiler for Crimson Blader. But like I said, this card can be completely devastating, and it can change the outcome of an entire game. One of the next cards that I really appreciate is Dragon's Ravine. Now, people are looking at this like, what? So, let me clarify what this card does. So, the first thing it says is you can discard 1 card, and then you can add a Dragoonity from your deck to your hand, or you can send a dragon monster from your deck to the graveyard. So, let's say you open up a play such as 3 big dragons. We'll say 3 different big dragons, or even, 2 different big dragons and a super rejuvenation with Ravine. Now, we don't know what the other 2 cards in hand are, but that's kind of an irrelevant point. Now, this is not that difficult to open, because you play, 12 big dragons, and you play 3 of these. So this is something that you'll likely open in a typical game. This card's really nice bonus to have, because it is only a 3 of compared to these as 12 ofs in a sense. Now this card, you see it as a 1 or 2 of in a deck. So if you open it, it's a bonus. So let's say you open up a play like this, and your opponent, has an open board, or you're going first. You could simply activate the Dragon's Ravine, discard 1, activate Dragon's Ravine to dump a dragon to the graveyard, putting another dragon monster then in the graveyard. By doing so, you then remove these 2 dragons to special summon this card. And then you search your deck for 2 dragons. We'll go with this one, and we'll go with another Blaster as the targets. We'll go with Lightning and Blaster. We'll discard. We'll special summon Lightning, or another Tempest. We'll make a Draco Sack, and we'll detach, and this guy can now activate, I suppose, if that's something that we're looking for. Now we can read you for 3 at the end phase, and that was with a hand that usually wouldn't be playable, just simply because you opened up with too many copies of the same card, or basically unplayable amount of dragons, which can happen in many game states. So keep that in mind. Ravine's a very solid card. Doesn't mean you need to play it. Some people don't like it. However, the card is still a very solid tech choice. Now, another card that people I've been seeing in deck lists is Kaiku the Ghost Destroyer. Now, this card is, we already know how it's good in the mirror match, is because we understand that when this card's in play, that your opponent only may not banish any cards from either player's graveyard. So that puts you at a high level of an advantage. So if your opponent is low on cards in their hand, you can easily put this in play to usually seal the deal. Also, he can attack and remove, let's say, baby dragons and Maxis and things along those lines to prevent your opponent from making a comeback play if they do take your Kaiku, or if Kaiku somehow is to leave the field. Kaiku is insane in the Spellbook matchup because you summon this card, and not only can they not now activate Fate, but then it beats Jougin. So you kill 2 birds with 1 stone, and then you start going off. You take your opponent's Kaiku, and you go from there, and you usually win. And the reason why I say you usually win at that point is because you have taken care of the Fate problem, you've taken care of the Jowgen problem, and you've taken their Kaiku. Now, that's not to say that the game is over, because your opponent still has outs, but that's just saying your opponent opens up a Judgment Day, which is probably going to happen, and they will probably open up with a 3 of Kaiku the Ghost Destroyer, and then their field, Fate Jowgen, Fate Jowgen Kaiku. Hard to beat, but under those circumstances, very beatable, because you play Kaiku the Ghost Destroyer, or you side deck Kaiku the Ghost Destroyer. Either way, Kaiku the Ghost Destroyer is a very solid card. My recommendation would be to play 1 or 2 copies in either your main or side deck at this event, at the World Championship Qualifier. Now, there's 2 cards left that we're going to talk about today. The first one is Book of Eclipse. Now, this card is an out to spell books. Now, we already know that Book of Moon is a very solid card. It always has been in nearly every single format of Yu-Gi-Oh! That's why it is at 1, because it's such a versatile card. Now, the reason why this card is very good, it's not only is it a Book of Moon, but it Book of Moon's multiple monsters. Yes, we understand that at the end phase, the cards will flip up and they'll draw. But we're either doing one of 2 things. We're hoping they don't have an end phase, or 2, we don't care about their end phase because we're taking their Kaiku and we're destroying their Jowgen. So, let's say your opponent, just like we said with Kaiku, opens up Judgment Day, which is not unlikely, with a Kaiku. So they're going to go Kaiku, Judgment Day, Secrets, Masters, Tower, Special Jowgen at the end phase. Something that they can do every single time they set Fate, they pass. So their field's Kaiku, Jowgen, Fate, Tower, I guess, if you want to include that. Which is not very unlikely to see. Now, we're going to go ahead and play this card, book both their cards face down. We're going to steal their Kaiku, so now Fate's dead later as well. And we're going to flip summon that Kaiku. So we have now a face-up attack position Kaiku. Their Jowgen's set, we can just go off. And we're going to go ahead and kill his Jowgen. And we'll probably, remove Jowgen from play with Kaiku's effect if we can put another monster in play to destroy Jowgen first. Because we don't want them to life back Jowgen, because that's devastating. So we set up that kind of lock on our opponent, which is very helpful, obviously. Because, they only play 3 Jowgen and usually only one... they only play 1 Jowgen and usually only 3 Kaiku. So if you can get rid of 1, you've only got 2 more to deal with. And they can't Fate. So you're setting yourself up for some serious success. Now, the last card we're going to talk about today is Psy Blocker. Now, this card started seeing a lot of play in the OCG. And the reason why is because this card shuts off so many plays for your opponent, and whatever play that you decide you want to shut off for your opponent. So this card states, and it reads, once per turn you can declare 1 card name. With that name, cards with that name and their effects cannot be used until the end phase of your opponent's next turn. Not until the end phase, until the end of your opponent's next turn. So what this card does is it says, your opponent has an Evil Swarm Ophion, we'll say. We're going to normal summon Psy Blocker, and if they don't have the Solemn Warning or the Compulse on Summon, we're going to go ahead and activate the effect and declare Evil Swarm Ophion. Now, Ophion is now on the field as a 25/50 monster that does not have an effect. Because this card states used, that effect cannot be used, it implies that the card can already be face up on the field or on the field whenever you activate this card. So, what we're going to do is we're going to declare Evil Swarm Ophion. Ophion is now a 25/50 beater. So what we're going to do from there is we're going to go ahead and we're going to take we're either going to take that Ophion, or we're going to just go ahead and destroy it. And now, the reason why this is also a plus is because it says until the end of your opponent's next turn. Your opponent then cannot put another Ophion in play. So, with that being said, it's just a completely solid play. And this card shuts off a lot of other plays. You can, in the mirror match, declare Big Eye. Let's say you set up a field with Big Eye, Draco Sack, and you're just like, well, I really don't want to get blown out by a Big Eye play. So we're going to put this card in play, we're going to declare number 11 Big Eye, and now your opponent can no longer Big Eye. So that's kind of the idea behind that. So, like I said, there are some serious tech choices that we're seeing all over the place right now. I was very happy to go ahead and go over this stuff with you. If you guys have any questions for me, feel free to go ahead and send me a message, comment on my video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and go ahead and like me on Facebook. That is facebook.com/YGOTRBailey. And speaking of TR Bailey, this is TR Bailey signing out.